Hello, Alexandra. Let's wait just 1 minute and let's begin, okay?
Hello, teacher. Okay.
Okay, hello, let's begin. Good afternoon, good evening. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so we have already seen from a speaking section the question one that is independent, that you need to say your own opinion. The question two, where you have to read an announcement and then listen a dialogue, then summarize the position of one of the dialoguers, and then right now we're going to check the question number three, that is a reading, a passage, and a part of a lecture where you have to summarize the idea from it. Okay, so let me show. So far, do you have any question? Any doubt? No, no questions. Okay. Okay. Let's see. The question three, also integrated. It's compounded by two things, the reading and the listening. The reading part takes about 50 or from 45 to 50 seconds or a little more. The usual thing is you have only 45 seconds to read it. Read and understand, to take notes. There usually is an article or passage on an academic topic. As always, we're going to be focused on academic things. Here, the author will introduce the topic, define it, and maybe give some additional details. In the reading, remember always that in the reading, you'll have the context of all things here, okay? So the reading will help you to introduce the context about what is it going to be talking of. And in the listening, you're going to reaffirm the ideas and they're going to ask you to summarize mainly from the listening. The listening this time will be a lecture that is mainly a class, part of the class. Here the professor will give a further explanation on the same topic. He will present one or two examples, some facts, evidence, etc. And they are going to be explaining like a normal class, okay, like in a normal class, okay. Then when you have read the reading and the listening, you will listen the question, you will see the question, the prompt that is asking that summarize one position or summarizing the main idea from the lecture, okay. And so here you had to explain the context. Now, depending on how look you are, depending on your looking, is the topic that you're going to see in. They will talk, they are different characteristics, the different topics that they could be about psychology, about biology, about business, about art, history, literature, sociology, geology, and those things. The most common or the maybe the one that you will get is about psychology thing or a biology thing. They are mainly preference about things, about science. In psychology, they ask about interactions from human being, about the memory experiences, how we process and respond to them. So you're learning, okay, in general. In this psychology, we could say that is easy because they are kind of concepts about nature, concepts about, well, the nature of the human being, you know, how they think, some theories in here. Okay. Now biology thing, they talk about the living organisms, the organization, life process, relationship, adaptation, etc. Those kind of things. And maybe it is um personally for me this is the difficult one because it is about science, no science in general, the specific things. So I think for psychology, we can understand the theory and we can explain these things. But in science, like biology and things, you have to use very specific terms, concepts. You have to use and repeat them. Obviously, they don't ask you to you already have the knowledge about this. Okay, so it's not like yes, you have to be prepared about the three laws of Newton's. You have to use it like this and that. Now, if you don't know the topic, it is okay. What they actually want is to see if you can retain some information from the listening. Okay, so you can repeat that information. Okay, so if you don't remember that the concept called, I don't know what you like, the membranes from the cells and hypochondrial things, and it's like, well, you can use it, something called in the brain is use it for this and that, yeah, but you understood the idea, you can explain it in your own way. That's what they actually want, that you can repeat the idea but uh, in your own words. Okay, so that's why you need to understand. If you don't know the topic, you know anything about the brain, you don't know anything about the cells, the organisms, it is okay. Don't worry. Don't be pressured like, oh my god, I don't know anything about math, calculus, algebra, or things like that. It doesn't matter, you know, because what you need to do, explain in your own words what they say about it. Now about business, a little easier. Here we have some statistics, things like that. They actually ask what was the position of someone, etc. And art, history, literature, sociology, and geology, they are not really often. So you maybe not see it. That's why depending on your, if you're lucky or not, maybe that day you have something about literature and they ask about, okay, let's talk about Oedipus Rex in the history of the Socrates and something like that. Maybe, no, but it's not that complicated. Okay. Now, what do you need to do? When you are taking notes, remember you have to take notes about two things, the reading and the lecture. From the reading, you need to identify the topic or key word, key term of the definition. Some details, the details are optional. Okay. They usually the important information is usually at the title. They have the context of the main idea of what is the announcement about. The title is very important. So you can take note about the title. It will help you. Okay. And in usually at the beginning of the announcement, they explain in a big general concept or big general terms what is the general idea. Okay, very random. And in the middle of the announcement, you will see some examples, details, etc. Something that it help. They are not that necessary if you don't want to take notes about. The only what you need is to know or to understand those examples so you can relate to the lecture. Okay. Actually, you may be not include in your speech the details from the reading, okay, because you need to focus. They ask you to focus on the lecture. Okay, now in the lecture you need to identify the examples and details. Here, yeah, we need to identify them about what they say. No, that's why from the reading is the context, the general idea, so you know that the examples from the lecture are going to be related to that context. So you have to give the space. They usually, in a normal lecture, they are 2 or 3 examples. They usually are two examples, because as I told you, the TOEFL task is predictable because it is with the steps. The first you listen is the introduction, then you will listen the examples like that, first and second, and then at the end you will listen the conclusion of everything. Okay, so in that moment you need to identify the signal words that help you to identify where each example start. Okay, so that's what you need from the reading and lecture. Now in the reading, look, it starts with this with the title, like behavior modification. That is the title. So you know that all this article or all this announcement or all this passage is about behavior modification. Okay. So in that moment, you can start reading. Remember, you only have 45 seconds to read. So actually depends on how fast can you read. If you read very fast, you can read completely once and 2 and 3 times if you want. But if you read slow, very slow, and you can only read once, a good idea is to pay attention to the first 3 lines and the last 3 lines, okay? Because the first 3 lines are the main idea, and the last 3 lines, they are mainly the conclusion that supports the main idea, okay? So they kind of repetitive with it from the beginning. Or sometimes you won't see a specific introduction, but you will see the conclusion. So you can see both, okay? So like this, here it says, individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences on their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated. Here, the first 2 lines, that individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequence of their actions. That is the idea, general context, but you don't have to copy all that. Remember, it's not even possible that you copy all that. in 45 seconds. Remember, okay, you need to complete more. You have to read more. So what you need to do is to understand and copy in keywords. No? So you could say like, even you can use symbols, you can use little draws like little people with lines and points. No, lines and points modify behavior based on actions, and that's it. That's the idea you need. No, that is with symbols or whatever you want to use, but you can draw something like this. They are people. I understand that are people. Remember, use things that you know, that you relate, that you understand. Because maybe if I draw like things like which, and I understand by myself, well, I have a problem here. So I know I need to understand what I'm drawing. Okay, so this for me, they are people. Okay, then change for actions. Actions, previous actions. And that's it. That's my note. Okay, so I understand. That's what I understand. Okay, those are my symbols. Yeah, so you need to find how. If you want to copy and you are able to copy very fast, do it. You can copy code. But remember, what you need is only the idea. Okay, so from here, these are examples. These are some examples related to the topic. And the last one, it says, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequences of that behavior. Can you see that these last two lines is mainly the same that the first three lines? Okay, so if you didn't understand at the beginning, you may understand at the end, but you can see the main points in both. Sometimes at the end, it is not related to that because it doesn't have a conclusion. Remember, always conclusions are optional. So normally we have at the beginning the main idea. So you can read these three lines carefully and understand, and then start reading and understanding the examples. So in the listening, you can use it as a base of what you are going to say. Okay. So to get the context, let's read this. Please, Carla, can you read it complete?
Okay, behavior modification. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequence on their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in a pleasant consequence, that behavior is likely be repeated and unpleasant consequence. On the other hand, discusser further and repetition on their behavior. While behavior modification can be observed in experience, it also occurs frequently in everyday settings when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequence of that behavior.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is the first passage, the first reading that you had to do. Okay, remember, be careful on the time. You only have 45. Okay, at the time of the TOEFL, you will see a countdown clock over here, I think, or in the middle, I don't remember. But you will see a countdown clock because it times goes. When the 45 seconds ends, it would change automatically. Okay, if you didn't finish, anyway, it will change. Okay, now in the lecture, they have two options: when they have two examples or when they have just one example. Yeah, in here, when you have two examples, you will listen, and also at the beginning introduction they say, and this theory is explained by these two main examples. First, this, and that. Second, or then they explain in each. Okay, so you need to identify where are the examples. That it says you need to identify the concept and details of it. So a good idea is to leave space for two examples in your piece of paper. So you say example one, example two. If you don't know how many examples will be there, so leave three spaces for examples if you want. So if you only have taken one example, it is okay, but you have the space. Now, how can you identify the examples? Because they start with a signal word. Okay, usually to introduce an example, they say, to explain this better, da, 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 da. Or for instance, the professor said this and this and that. Okay, or even using the word example. We're talking about the pets, no, the wild nature as a pet, how they change. For example, puppies are this and that. He's introducing an example. The example is puppies. Then from that, start listening details from that example. And in other example, we can see about the wolves in the nature. So you know that the another example, they're talking about wolves. They normally contrast the idea. Okay, they usually contrast the idea. So they start checking about the details of the example. Okay, they are usually about business and biology thing. When they are explaining concepts, they are explaining terminology. Now, talking about psychology things, they usually have just one example. They focus on just one example, and it's mainly about, or it's mainly from a story, um, because the psychology is related to the nature of the human being. So they explain the experience. So the professor starts saying a story about that problem in that psychology class, and usually talk about experiments. Okay, so important is to identify the cause and effect for the example. Cause, something that you do, and effect, what happened when you do the experiment and things like that. Maybe in the prompt they ask you to explain that cause and effect relationship from the experiment. Okay, so you need to identify what is the experiment, how do you do, and what happened when you do that. Obviously related to the experiment itself. Like in the past 50 years, I don't know, who do you like? Verne try to explain how you can get, I don't know anything about psychology, but something like that. Yeah, explain that. I remember once, yeah, they said, for example, in the previous one, the modification, the behavior modification is related to how the environment affects to the people, affects to the person, and the way he behaves, the way the community behaves is the way the person will behave. So here is explaining the cause, that is how the community behaves and the effect or the consequence, this person will behave at the same way. No, this is the relationship between it. Something is happening, and as a result, you can see this. You can demonstrate this. Okay, so you can find some consequences of events. Now look at this. Here, we have the lecture. Please, Tanya, can you read the first paragraph?
It says, one adaptation is their ability to release chemicals that can prevent damage from insects. Now, we all know that insects need to eat the tree's leaves and branches to survive, causing damage. Trees can limit this damage by releasing a chemical substance that insects can't live with. This makes the trees less vulnerable to these attacks. For example, redwood trees release gallotonic acid from their leaves and branches to scare off hungry insects.
Okay, can you continue, please, Alejandra?
Another adaptation is their complex root system that helps them to survive during a storm. You see, trees have many roots and the roots can grow in all directions, even tangling with the other trees' roots. So during a big storm, trees can survive by holding each other up. Take redwood trees as an example. They have the strongest root system found in trees. Their root system often extends as much as 100 feet around the trees. This is very long distance compared to other trees' root system. In addition to that, these underground root networks often end up growing in circular clusters. This circular cluster gives them tremendous strength against the forces of nature. This way can withstand high winds and even floods.
That's correct. Thank you. So here we have, continue with here. I will read it. This happens all the time with kids in schools. Say there is a little boy or girls who is just starting school. Well, they are not really used to the rules about proper behavior from a classroom. So at the beginning, they might, I don't know, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they are supposed to be sitting down, you know, just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon, they'll learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They'll also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, their reward. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy faces stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reactions from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to. And that's it. Okay. Now, as you see in this lecture, it is explained in the main thing here, giving some specific reasons, not giving some. One adaptation is the ability to release chemicals that can prevent damage from insects. This is the idea. The first one, yeah? In the rest, you can see the example of each. What is the example? What is the example here? Ability to release chemicals that prevent damage from insects. Okay. The reason or the detail for that ability, you came from here. Now we'll know that insects need to eat the trees, leaves, and branches to survive, causing damage. Trees can limit this damage by releasing a chemical substance that insects can live with. So you understand here, insects eat tree leaves to survive, right? Trees defend releasing chemical substance they can live with. Those are your notes that you hear in this example. Remember, because you won't have enough time to copy all, okay? So you need to be specific words. Then another adaptation here you see is introducing a new example. Another adaptation is the complex root system. Complex root system that helps them to survive during the storm. The notes, complex root system, survive during the storm. You see, trees have many roots and the roots can grow in all directions, even tangling with the tree's roots. So during a big storm, trees can survive by holding each other. Maybe this expression you can listen in a different voice. You could use it and say it at the same time when you can include in your speech, okay? Because this is like an idiom, something that you can use. It is better. Take redwood trees as an example. Here, from the example, you have a detailed and a specific example from it. Redwood, okay? They have the strongest root system found in trees. Their root system often extends as much as 100 feet around the tree. This is very long distance compared to trees' root system. In addition to that, this underground root networks often, if you see all this is still related to the redwood, okay? So only take notes of few things here and understand the topic here. And then it goes to a specific example from maybe from school, no? An applied example. The same thing about behavior, but this applied to a classroom. Here, this example could be asked in the prompt, like explain how behavior can change during the classroom. I don't know, a state opinion from or explain the change of behavior using the classroom as the main example, something like that. So you can focus here because this is the biggest example. Okay, they talk more about this, so maybe it will be focused on this example. Okay, and in general ideas, I think it is easy to understand. Now you can use your own words to say it. Now, new kids in a new place, they misbehave and the teacher applies some classroom controls so the kid understand how to behave during the classes. And that is the main idea from all that, right? So you don't have to say more. Remember, you have to speak just 60 seconds. So you don't have lots of time to explain carefully everything. So you have to summarize everything. Okay. Now, any questions so far? Any doubt? No questions? We go well? Okay. Say goodbye, Poppy. He's going out. Now, here. This we have this. This is a template. As always, we have a template here that you can use. Yes. This template, you can use it, and you see the first 10 seconds is about to introduce the topic. They usually, it is from the passage. You can see it, the reading passage. So according to the reading passage, that is the change of behavior is described as, and you explain a little bit the description, how to understand that thing. And again, maybe you can understand or you can find this concept, this definition from the first 3 lines, okay, in this passage. So you have to say some more. Then he says, in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the example of, and you start saying, of the redwood, this and that, or the insects eating leaves, according what you, how you take notes and you explain. Example, and you explain it. As the passage mentioned, kids in the classrooms usually happen, no, as the passage mentioned, we can control the behavior just like it happens to a kid in a new school with the professor applying control, behavior controls. So that's how, by using this example, the professor demonstrates that a kid can be controlled or inferred to behave as he wants. And you explain a little bit more, of course. But you see, this template is simple. It is just 2 things: the intro and 1 example, right? Sometimes people take more time explaining this example, but if you finish early, you can start saying this little part. That's why he says optional, because it's part of your ending process, like to close your idea, to include some other examples. But if you didn't say many, it is okay. At least you can explain very well the first example. We also have this one. Here we have separate the 2 examples, the 2 or 3 examples. According to the reading passage, is described as the same thing. The definition of the passage, usually having from the title and the first 3 lines. And then in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing 2 examples. Here you said that you're going to mention 2 examples. So you have to organize your ideas and mention both. The 2, because you already said that you have 2 examples. If you only mention 1, so you are not going according what you're saying. So it's a concept by providing 1 example and just explain 1 example. Okay, so according is provided by 3 examples. So you have to explain 3 examples. So be coherent of what you're saying. Okay, if you say 3 examples, well, say the 3 examples. If you say 2 examples, only 2 examples. Only 1, just 1. First, he or she explains that the redwood, for instance, instead of saying, for example, you use for instance or as an illustration or to illustrate. Furthermore, he or she also mentions that this and that, the kids. To illustrate, the professor includes the roots of this, that, shalala. And again, if you have enough time, as the passage mentioned, this and that, just like happening to with. So that's how, by using these examples, this is the conclusion, to end the idea. The professor demonstrates, and that's it. Now, as I told you, here are some tips. You, again, the passage is to set the context. Yeah, that's why you only need to understand from the title and the definition, and just understand the context. Don't pay attention or don't focus actually on the examples from the passage, because it is probable that you will be asked about the lecture. So you have to speak more about the lecture. Okay. But obviously you need to take notes from both, because you need to set both. Use transition words that you know from connectors, transitional signal words, etc. And obviously, depending on your pace, how fast you can speak, concentrate in bigger details instead of trying to explain more and more and more. If you speak slow, just concentrate details on one, and that focus on it, explaining very well, etc. If you speak very fast, you can concentrate in 2 or 3 examples, explain it, so you have enough time and you don't run out of time. So you can use the 60 seconds as well. Paraphrase. In this case, it is a good idea from the passage that you can paraphrase the lines that you're taking, because if you copy directly and you say it directly like that, they're gonna be saying that you are reading your speech, and we don't want they think that we are reading. Yeah. So you need to paraphrase, change some words, or explain by your own words. Again, if you don't understand the topic, try to explain by your own words. Say whatever you want to say, but trying to explain the topic with your own words. Like they are explaining something in the brain. So you say, we have something in our heads here in the brain that helps you to understand these things, and it's colored by red, and then they mention that okay, you are demonstrating that you understood the ideas, the lecture, the passage, even though you don't know the topic. At least you are explaining that. Okay. And now, because they are lecturer, this lecture is supposedly they are native, or is in a usual class. They speak fast, natural, without waiting anybody. Like they are speaking fast. If you are not able to take notes completely, and it's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't take notes. Well, at least you need to pay attention, because next you need to explain what you remember. Okay, what do you remember, like completely? No? If you were not able to take notes only. Okay. Now we have different templates. We also have this. This is, according to the reading passage, is described as, in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the example of, as the passage mentions, just like it happened to, okay, it's simple, having 2 or 3 examples. First, furthermore, again, you see they are so similar. According to the reading passage, describe a definition. Very similar. Okay, so let's practice. Let's do the little practice. Let's use this one, this template. Okay, so I don't know, take a picture, write it down in your piece of paper, wherever, and we are going to use the same passage and lecture. Okay. Tell me when you're ready, when you have this template already. Yep, ready? Remember, you can use this one or giving details from 2 examples. Yes, both are okay. Okay, so let's do the reading passage. Ready? Here we go. I'm gonna read it so everybody can listen it. I'm gonna read completely, okay? Remember, here it takes 45 seconds. It says, behavior modification. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences of their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated. An unpleasant consequence, on the other hand, discourages further repetition of the behavior. While behavior modifications can be observed in experiments, it also occurs frequently in everyday settings, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequence of that behavior. Now let's listen to the lecture that it says. One adaptation is their ability to release chemicals that can prevent damage from insects. Now, we all know that insects need to eat the tree's leaves and branches to survive, causing damage. Trees can limit this damage by releasing a chemical or substance that insects can live with. This makes the trees less vulnerable to these attacks. For example, redwood trees release gallutanic acid from their leaves and branches to scare off hungry insects. Another adaptation is their complex root system that helps them to survive during a storm. You see, trees have many roots and the roots can grow in all directions. Even tangling with other tree roots, so during a big storm, trees can survive by holding each other up. Take redwood trees as an example. They have the strongest root system found in trees. Their root system often extends as much as 100 feet around the tree. This is a very long distance compared on other trees' root systems. In addition to that, these underground root networks often end up growing in circular clusters. These circular clusters gives them tremendous strength against the forces of nature. This way, they can withstand high winds and even floods. This happens all the time with kids in the school. Say there is a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they are not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning, they might, I don't know, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they are supposed to be sitting down, you know, just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desk when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon they learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they are rewarded. The teacher tells them she is proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now, their behavior gets a good reactions from the teacher. The kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to. Okay, now you have 30 seconds to prepare and then 60 to speak. Okay, so prepare. Okay, now you have 1 minute or 60 seconds to speak. Who wants to speak first? Both like, no, not me. Who says me?
I have a question.
Tell me.
We're gonna talk about those three like examples, like the dehumidification, the insects and the kids, in all in one.
Yes. For example, you have the prompt. Let me see the prompt. The prompt will say, using the examples that the professor gave, explain the concept of behavior modification. To be the prompt. Okay, so then you had explained it. Okay, so you ready, Alejandra?
Maybe.
Okay, let's listen. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. So according to the reading passage, that it's about the professor says about the behavior modification. He said that individuals can change their behavior depending on the situation. Everything depends on the experience. In the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the example of the insects eating the tree leaves to survive. He also said that the root wood is an example because this is a stronger root system. And this chemical from this tree can prevent damage from insects. Also, he said that he gave an example about kids. So, oh yeah, I guess that's sorry.
Okay, it was the last part. Okay, in the last part you will say, and for those reasons,
Yeah,
the professor said or something, or
yeah.
just like don't say anything else and just stay quiet because they are only 5 seconds or 7 seconds is okay. Don't worry. Now let's listen to Carla. 60 seconds on the clock. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
According to the lecture about the bad behavior to the kids, in the lecture illustrates that behavior modification, that means it explains that the kids have bad behavior. In order to change that, the teachers say that the kids raise the hand when they want to talk, and and the kids learn about that they need to change their behavior in order to learn more. And yeah, that's all.
Okay, now here, I recommend you to use only singular expressions, because I see that you use a lot of s in the verbs. Yeah, you introduce s in the end. They likes, they wants, and it's like saying all the verbs with s. If you say it like that, you're gonna lose some very lot of points, because there is a part of the grammar. Now, if you say plural with a singular verb and then you're using that, it's like, no, it's not correct. So I recommend you to use only singular statements, singular nouns. So in that case, it doesn't matter if you use the yes or like the kid wants, it's easier for you. Okay, in that case. Okay, pretty good. And also focus on the easiest example. So if you're not able to speak fast and explain the three examples of the two, only focus on the easiest, so you can explain more. You can say more about that thing. You feel confident about the information you are mentioned about that example. Okay. So, and Tanya, she's gone. She leaves us. Okay. To finish, please answer this little survey that is on your screen.
I didn't receive any.
No?
Yeah.
Oh. Have you received, Carla? Okay. I guess this is Carla's. No?
I
Alejandra?
received.
Okay.
No,
This
I don't
is
know why I'm having this problem also with Miss Andrea. That I don't know what's happening, that I can't receive the first question.
oh. Oh. So what did you do the last time with the Miss Andrea? I see you answer by chat, right?
Yes, I answered by chat, and also she said that she's gonna report something like that, or tell to the company that I'm struggling with that.
Okay. Well, the first question is, how well prepared is the class today, or was the class today? From well prepared, nice prepared, some prepared.
Yeah, well prepared.
I will say fine. Can you write on the chat? Like, I could
Okay.
show you, but it's not how to. Let me take a screenshot. I can show you the questions. So you can see the questions. Here are the questions. So you can answer question 1. Write on the chat. Say question 1 and the answer. Muy bien preparada, algo preparada, no estoy preparada, no me gustó. Okay, the question 2 is, do you understand the topics from today? Totally, yes, more or less, no, and not at all. And the last question is, do you have any complaint with the teacher? Yes or no? Okay, and that's it. So
I have one question, just one question.
tell me.
For example, in this example, you gave us like 3 examples. Like, please, first you start with the behavior modification, and then you start with the insects, and the last it was the kids. If we don't have enough time, or if we only understand one, can we only say, like, for example, if it's three, it's like just the only like we understand, or like only two, or I don't know.
Attached to the one you understand, but they usually ask you in a specific one, a specific example. As I told you, explain the concept that the professor gave of the behavior. It is open, no? Now, if the prompt asks you, explain the concept using the kids example, or using the kids as an example. So you need to focus on the kid, okay? So actually you need to be able to understand the lecture, and they focus. Usually they ask you in general, like explain this concept using the examples from the professor. They are mainly like this. So if you only understand one, focus on that one.
Okay, but we're not gonna lose points if we didn't say like the three examples.
No,
If
the
it's
thing
general,
the thing
right?
is that you have to explain detail it. If you only listen one, explain it, detail it. That you
Oh.
have to explain correctly. It's preferable if you can explain it in more than one example.
Okay. Okay.
So thank you so much, and I will see you next class. Have a nice and beautiful evening.